I had already been broken, been in jail, and they tossed me to die in the streets. And when I first got there, I still said, I believe in God. His name is Jehovah. But when I was sitting in those meetings, the chanting, so many different things, it began to remind me, it reminded me of being a Jehovah's Witness. And I was like, wow, I thought what I was a part of was so unique. Why does this feel so familiar?
Life can bring us down, but turn it all around.
All right, there we go. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problemo. So, I just basically heard that you're a cool guy and that you're somebody that would be good to interview. So I thought, fill me in on who you are. So
all right,
I'll know why you're the cool guy.
Well, my name is Micah Allen Losh, and during COVID, a lot of things had been building. I was in a marriage that wasn't good. I mean, no good marriage ends in divorce. So,
I've been there.
That was going on. COVID was going on. My ex-wife worked. She's an RN. So we both were working, tons of stress. Then we had our babysitter back out of watching our kids. And my mother refused to help because I had, growing up, my father died when I was 13. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
I was sad,
Oh, naturally. Yeah.
There was just no compassion from my mother, from Jehovah's Witnesses. His funeral, it wasn't a funeral parlor, but they barely talked about him. He was a glossed over detail as they're attempting to recruit people. And, I believed in paradise and I wanted to be there. And I even got baptized around 4 months after my dad died. But it still hurt. 13 is a critical age. You need a father. Yeah. I suppose the phrase would be kind of soft shunning. I really began to notice people withdrawing, and you're, as a Jehovah's Witness, you're always hearing go to the older brothers and what is it? They'll grease you with oils, which sounds not
weird.
Like time I have, but yeah, they're supposed to console you. They even, they're always talking about look after the widow and the fatherless boy. And I mean, if I think one time a tree hit some guttering. Yeah, brothers came over and fixed it. But what I was hearing wasn't matching my experience. And of course, in the 90s, they put me on a lot of antidepressants as a young teenager, which made me very suicidal. They didn't know that at the time. And also, I began to view my depression as evidence of Jehovah's rejection. Because every time I reached out to the elders, I would say, I guess, trigger warning, but, I would say, I'm very suicidal. I'm thinking about harming myself. And in hindsight, it was the meds, but I didn't know that, and they wouldn't even speak to me. My mother asked the elders to talk to me, and they said, no, he wants attention. And I was 18, and that was very, very devastating because, you believe they're handpicked by God. And every time people said Jehovah loves you, I thought bullshit. I have plenty of instances where his spirit anointed men don't give a damn about me. But I just meandered. Really, I spent 20 years in just abject misery. I remember one time as an experiment, I said, I'm going to see how long I can go without reaching out to anyone else in the congregation. And it was like a year. No one, invited me to do anything. Even most people barely acknowledged me at the hall. I had doors slammed in my face when I was walking in the Kingdom Hall. I would say I'd look like you in the eye and say, hey, 5 feet from you. And people would just look at me and turn and leave. And I would go to the elders, and it was always in my head, my fault. Why you need to keep trying. And I don't know how I'm alive now. I have made very serious suicide attempts, I believe 19, 20 times. I was even in a coma once. I overdosed on sleeping pills and I died. And then I was screaming involuntarily. My mom found me and called, and they, pumped me full of charcoal, and I was in a coma for 37 hours. But from 13 to 33, it was pretty much just perpetual deja vu. And then a woman I worked with, my ex-wife, she expressed interest in coming to the Kingdom Hall. And so she was coming, she started bringing her son. And as soon as the congregation realized that her and I were friendly, they started trying to separate us, which I really couldn't reconcile, because at the time I believed, I was being rewarded for just suffering like Job in the Bible. Maybe Jehovah is going to let me have a wife and a family, and that would be nice.
Yeah.
And but all of a sudden the elders called us into the back room and said, you guys can't spend any time together unless it's after meetings. And I was like, bullshit, that's not in any publication, but my mother and I had a really severe falling out, because she was telling me, we had to be loyal to Jehovah. And I'm telling her there is absolutely nothing that, in any publication or in the Bible. It's just, they hate me. She knew they hated me because she had admitted it to me. She knew no one cared about her son. And
so why do you think that they had such a negative reaction to you? Because you were depressed since 13, and then they just sort of do you think there's a reason, something that you can think back on, the why they would basically pick on you like they were?
Because I think part of it, which I do discuss in my memoir, is I really began to push back. I felt like I was born into the true religion, but I saw injustice, and I felt this kind of righteous indignation. So when people would be very judgmental, I was counseled for wearing black too much to meetings, and that, they said, don't you understand that you could be interpreted as evil or, whatever. And I told the guy, I said, well, you're in effeminate colors and a bunch of pastels. Don't you understand you could be mistaken for a homosexual? I'm not saying you are, but, if we're going to just make these assumptions based on stupid things, and, elders don't like when you talk back to them. And
so if you assume something, I could assume something, and they didn't like it.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. Quid pro quo.
They don't like being called out ever.
I did not give them the double honor. So right before I had met my ex-wife, I told an elder about a suicide plan with a backup, because I was just finished. And then I met her, and then things went wrong after a few months. So it ended up that I moved in with my ex-wife, and we eloped after about a month. That's about how long it took. So I had been disfellowshipped once before, and so I was disfellowshipped for the second time. And then because we had
for getting back with your ex-wife?
Well, so this is when we first got married.
Okay.
We got married. Now her family, I had met her mother once, and they didn't know me, because how I was raised, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you're just not worth knowing. It was just, I'm going to be loyal. So she didn't want to tell her parents, and that really hurt. That went on for over a year. And during that time, of course, I was cut off from everyone, my mother, the few friends I had. And you're told, you're cut off from Jehovah's Spirit. So I just began binge drinking, not drinking to get drunk, just like when I was drinking 24 beer every night, I went to hard liquor. I just couldn't deal with the pain. And I ended up being reinstated after 2.5 years. And then we were married right up until COVID. And, I've been drunk pretty much every day for 7 years. And in a blackout, my stepson had talked back to me, and I grabbed him by the shirt. I completely blacked out, and I woke up in jail. And, that was, fortunately, I did not physically harm him. I fell on him, and I guess, he had bruising on his chest, and I was horrified. I was disassociating because outside of that, I've never been in a fight. I don't like violence.
Yeah.
It's my fault that it's my fault that I was drinking that much, that I made that part of myself possible. And I'm sorry, I'm not telling a linear story. There's so much.
That's okay. It's your story to tell. Tell as much or as little as you like, in any order you want. Anything you feel that you want to share.
Well, cool. I had a thank you. Sorry, I kind of ramble, and I was up all day with my little boy. Me and my little boy went to see The Flash, and then we went bowling, and I'm wiped out. But so before waking up in jail, though, I had called the elder who, when I had told him about how I was planning on killing myself, he just dismissed it and said, "You have an easy life. You don't have anything to complain about." And I guess I was still trying to, I don't know, fix something in Jehovah's organization. I don't know. Maybe I didn't want to let go of the hope of my dad coming back. And so I got into an argument with that elder on the phone, and he lied to me. He said that we met in person, even though we spoke on the phone. So I hung up on him. He called me back and called me boy, and I flipped out on him. I was really upset. And when I called my mother, she told me that, because I told him, I said, in my congregation, there had been 3 people who died, 2 of them by suicide, and 1 had a very severe drinking problem. And nobody cared. Nobody addressed it. And I told that elder, I said, "You people who mistreat people like that, you don't deserve to live. That's just the cruelest thing ever, to tell people they're wrong for being sad or because they miss somebody who's dead. I just think that's one of the lowest forms of life." Well, he told my mother
they most definitely shouldn't be in any sort of a position of authority. No.
And when I was trying to tell my mother that, she told me that that I had threatened to murder the entire congregation, and they had to contact Bethel because they'd never had a witness behave like me. Which, if that was true, why were the police not contacted? But they don't contact them when people molest children. So, I guess, who knows? But regardless, I really feel like when I was disfellowshipped the second time and I came back, the congregation had got their tendrils into my mom more, and they had altered her. Even my ex-wife at the time said she's different, and I really didn't recognize her. But, what can you do? And
that's indoctrination for you.
Yeah. Well, and her and my father joined in the late 70s, early 80s. They were in their 30s. They chose, that way of life, which is staggering to me. But so I was in jail. I spent 77 days in jail, and I was praying. I even found a Bible. I thought that was, proof that Jehovah loved me. And then I wrote a letter to my mother asking for, I said, I need treatment for my drinking. and maybe the elders could talk to me. And my mom filed a no contact order against me. And it was during COVID, so it was digital court. But yeah, I mean, she screwed me at the absolute lowest point of my life, and painted me as a monster that, nobody said, here's a 37-year-old who doesn't have any, priors. And I'm not excusing it, but I can't imagine doing that type of thing as a parent. But so I signed a plea bargain because I thought, well, I can live in my car and I can still see my youngest boy. And when I got out, my car had been repossessed and I was homeless for 3 days. I didn't get to sleep inside 2 of those nights, and in a car one of those nights. And then I made my way to a halfway house, and I really wasn't familiar with AA. Now, I'd heard about it, but I didn't realize how religious it is, and also how similar it is to Jehovah's Witnesses. And
really,
it was, I had already been broken, been in jail, and they tossed me to die in the streets. And when I first got there, I still said, I believe in God. His name is Jehovah. But when I was sitting in those meetings, the chanting, so many different things, it began to remind me, it reminded me of being a Jehovah's Witness. And I was like, wow, I thought what I was a part of was so unique. Why does this feel so familiar? And that kind of, I had looked at some apostate literature before, but that was kind of the impetus. And then for me, I just Googled, what are cult tactics and ways of mind control? And because I thought, well, I'll see how many of these fit, it may be a couple. And every single one, it was just textbook what was done to me as a child, as a Jehovah's Witness. And
sorry, is this in 2020, 2021?
So I got out of jail.
Just keep the time frame right.
November 17th. Yeah, I was the first place I was in. Well, all the people who were talking about God were relapsing constantly. And, then they're telling me to pray to a light bulb, or as long as I don't rely on myself. And I thought that was a bunch of crap. It just didn't make sense to me. So, but I got thrown out because I don't believe in God. And then I was in another place that was not very good. And then the place I live in now, that's when I decided I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to, because I know a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, they leave and they lose a lot. But for me, I left and went right into another, essentially cult, trying to indoctrinate me, telling me I need God, that I'm not good enough. And they even, there are shaming terms in AA for people who don't believe or agree with the literature. It's, I don't know.
What type of terms would they use, would you say?
So, like I've said, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff in their main text, the big book. Well, that makes me a dry drunk. I'm not drinking, but I'm not working the steps of AA, they say, because I don't believe it. And then also, because for me, there was at one point I told somebody in that first halfway house, I said, I don't know if my mind has been warped by Satan or if I was in a cult. I really don't. And I just broke down crying. And then they told me that I suffer from terminal uniqueness, where I just want to feel special, and my relationship is so unique with alcohol and no one else could understand. And, and it's like, that's not the case, but, I was a Jehovah's Witness. I wasn't breaking the law or selling heroin. It was never about distancing myself from those people. It just, that's not my experience. So I don't need to worry about not dealing drugs. It was very frustrating because it was like they made these giant cracks and just swept people into them and didn't care. And, you know, the relapse rate in AA, I've read one report, like over 95%. In my experience, it fails almost everyone. And it's just, I mean, I don't know. You know, I'm not here to, I mean, I don't like AA.
I'm assuming it works for some people.
Very, very few.
Yeah.
But yeah. Because, I mean, in the meetings, they say rarely have we seen a person fail. Very, very rarely have I been in a meeting where there was even someone with 5 years sober. Now, I would say people probably leave and stay sober, but what AA says, if you leave, it's jails, institutions, or death. I mean, they say you can never leave. And I don't know. I mean, in my experience, I've seen so many people.
That's where I see that correlation with the cultiness.
Yeah, it's one of many. It's, you know, there's thought terminating cliches. When I said, wow, I wish I saw my son more. It's hard to not see him every day. I'll give it to God. You know, everything happens for a reason. It's meant to be this way. It just, which very much reminds me of Wait on Jehovah. If you ever, you know, said something about something in the congregation, and there were just so many, and
leave it in Jehovah's hands.
You can't question anything, because I was never saying, hey guys, let's go drink or do drugs. But when you tell me something, I just want to ask why, because I want to make sure I'm getting the best information. And it was just like, you Jehovah's Witnesses, if you question anything, you're criminalized and acted, you know, or they act like you're, I don't know, up to some nefarious plan. It's really bizarre. Now, I'm sure I'm in Indianapolis. There are a lot of religious people here, so I'm sure there are meetings where it's not that way. But I just think it's sad to tell people you can't do it no matter what. You have to find something to rely on, as long as it's not yourself. I don't like things that disempower people, you know. I really think that's a predatory thing. I think it has no merit.
What helps you to get through, would you say?
I mean, to not drink. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just drinking specifically, but you know, just in general gets you through. What?
I mean, I have no desire to drink. If I took a lot of time to really be introspective, and you know, I just realized that how I grew up being born into Jehovah's Witnesses, I was contrived and just a circumscribed person, and I didn't feel like, I felt like I had to question everything about myself. You know, do I believe in equality? You know, all of these things, because I just felt like everything had been controlled, and I don't know. It was just like apps or reduced to ash. I just had to rebuild, and you know, I don't know. I feel like sometimes people ask me about politics, and I don't even feel qualified to really have an opinion, you know, because I spent just 37 years in a cult expecting to live forever. And, you know, they instill that black and white worldview. And of course, Jehovah's Witnesses say worldly. Alcoholics Anonymous calls non-members normies, which is another term that I didn't like. But for me, you know, my drinking led to something that I would have never thought possible, that I'm ashamed of and really embarrassed by. But I really wanted to tell my story because, like I said, I feel like most people just don't go from one controlling group to the other. And also, I think it's really sad when people, you know, I've known people that I really liked and cared about, and they relapsed on meth or heroin, and I haven't seen them. And, you know, the last time I saw them, they're like, yeah, I've been praying, you know, I've been giving it to God. And it really sucks, because it's like, man, no, you can do it. I mean, I believe people can. Will you necessarily succeed? Who knows? But you can pursue the things you want and desire.
Yeah.
And I just hate that when people are crippled and hobbled. But for me, I really enjoy writing. That I published my memoir, Mentally Diseased, on my 40th birthday of last year, December 10th. That was the first time celebrating.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I felt like I reclaimed that day. And then I had so in my memoir, there's a poem before each chapter. I've written poetry since I was 18. And when I was finished, I just had 100 pieces that I hadn't used. And initially I'd put a lot more of them, but it was disjointed and I didn't like it. So I thought, this is essentially a record of just 20 years of misery. I mean, there are some vignettes that are fictional and just, little ideas and stuff, but a lot of it is just me writing down my despair and kind of questions but stuff I could never say out loud that, that wasn't safe. And I couldn't even really speak it, but I could write it down, and that gave me kind of enough distance and plausible deniability. So
so it's not really chock full of laughs and guffaws there, huh?
No,
but that's okay,
Yeah, well, I wanted to be brutally honest and just talk about indoctrination and how it failed me at so many critical times. And I don't feel like really the story is about me, because I know that children are still being born into it. And I know that people are going to keep getting, thrown out, be homeless, and be terrified in a world that they think is controlled by Satan. So, I mean, there's a lot of embarrassing things in there. Even I can't talk, judicial committee that was very intrusive, the questions the brothers were asking me. But I wanted to
in case, sorry not to interrupt, but in case someone is watching this and what's the judicial committee, you want to explain that?
Oh yeah, sorry. That vernacular. Basically, if you've committed wrongdoing, you might meet with two brothers, and based on how serious the sin is, you might go to three brothers, and that is a judicial committee. I forget what they call two brothers, but yeah, they were asking me very intrusive questions about me.
Shepherding call?
No. Yeah, I mean, oh God,
I don't know what the official term would be for two. Once you see that third brother pop in the room, you're like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now.
That's really the nail in the coffin. I never had a good outcome when a third guy showed up. But, and if you were, if you did something sexual, they're going to ask very, very intrusive questions about your body and what's happened. And I really tried to, I don't know. I've told people have told me, one of my friends, after she read my book, she came up and she said, I just feel like you need a hug. And people have told me that it made them cry, but I just wanted them to kind of go through that experience with me. So I hope that I did that, because it's just so wrong. Especially, I've talked to women who said they were assaulted sexually, and the brothers are asking them these hideous questions. It's weird at the time, if I did something wrong, I would tell on myself, even though I hated going to those meetings because they're so embarrassing. And they act like how much time has gone past reflects how sorry you feel. But for me, when time had gone by, it was because of I was mortified, and I knew they were going to, ask me these questions, and I didn't want to answer them. So it doesn't even reflect you feeling like, oh, I'm messed up and I want to, make things right with my God. It's all about shaming. And it's just, I feel the more, the longer you've been away from it, the more clearly you see it for just how gross and
Yeah.
weird and controlling it is. And
there's a lot of stories of sisters that have gone through that,
yeah,
because you've got these three men, and you don't, I mean, they're supposed to be determining the severity, and they have to categorize everything, but you don't know if they're just like, hey sister, what exactly did you do, how did it feel, etc., etc.
yeah.
It's a weird position to be put into. And I just uploaded a video earlier today about basic human rights, and one of those that the Jehovah's Witnesses kind of violate is that of dignity, because
Oh,
to be put in that position is anything but dignified. And it's just, there's no compassion with them. It's all very, we got to get the facts, we got to get these details, but they don't consider what this is doing to the person.
yeah. Well, I don't remember it happening much, maybe the last 10 years, but I remember once there was a brother and a sister were publicly reproved. So in front of the congregation, so and so that, whatever. And then they gave a local needs about 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very explicit. And I just remember because I was maybe 15, she was probably 22. She was in front of me, and it was like you couldn't even see her head from behind. It was just so down, because everybody knew they were talking about what he did to her. And it just went on and on. And I just stared at the design on my dress pants. It was like,
I would be
I was
very
trying to, like,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
I was like, I just want to fall through this and escape. And just, it was awful. And you felt bad for them. And of course, all the kids are there. I think I was 5, 6 years old, and there was a talk about bestiality. And so I'm like, what's bestiality, Mom? And she's like, well, you know what sex is, which I did, but I shouldn't have known what sex is.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, that's when somebody has sex with an animal. And at the time, I thought it was funny. I was like, what, like a chicken? Like, I just thought that was really a stupid thing, but it's just absurd, because my son is 5. I would never allow him. I mean, I guess I did before, when he was very young, but and when I was his age, my mom told me I was a good for nothing slave. I mean, I can't imagine doing that to a child. It's just, it's so abusive. It's so awful. And it really upsets me how Jehovah's Witnesses have this positive, well, not a positive reputation, but I don't feel like they have the one they deserve, because people just, they know Mormons are weird. They know Scientology is very bizarre, but Jehovah's Witnesses, outside of the pedophilia, I feel like a lot of it isn't really known.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just known as those friendly people that knock on your door.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things when I was going through cult tactics that I looked up, it said cult members must be walking, talking advertisements for the group, because no one really joins the group when their life is going good, which was revelatory for me, because I thought, oh, that's why they hated me, because I was the depressed, quiet, sullen kid in all black. And, I wasn't on brand or whatever, in khaki and pastel and whatever
Tan pants and a polo.
Yeah. Well, and I have 19 tattoos. I got most of them while I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Really?
Yeah.
I only have one that I got.
I have a lot.
A year ago.
What's crazy is I never got counseled about tattoos once.
Really?
But I got counseled about Ozzy Osbourne, listening to him, black clothing.
Yeah.
I had several Mustangs. I never got counseled for that. Well, no, one time somebody said something, and I said, well, you never let me drive out in service anyway, so I'm going to drive a cool car. So I guess I was always kind of a contrarian. And
but you just have to have a 4-door Mustang, and you're good for a service car.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like not even that I'm reacquiring parts of myself. I feel like parts have developed. And then after I published my first book, when I wrote it, I really had hoped for a sense of catharsis, but I didn't feel that. What I felt was empowerment. And, so on June 10th, I published my second book, which is my collection of poetry and prose, even a letter I wrote after I was in the coma in a stress center. And I call that Gangrenous Speeches. And then in another 6 months, I'm writing a horror novella because I was always told, my interest in heavy metal and horror movies, was sinful. And, it really makes me angry that I tried to pray away my interest in a part of who I am. So I'm writing a novella about the Antichrist and a religion very similar to Jehovah's Witnesses. So I don't know, mate. It feels like a good way to deal with some anger and just I always liked horror. I like scary stuff, so I wanted to write a scary story, and I've really enjoyed that and the world building and just pursuing my passion. I always recently I reconnected with my first girlfriend. It was online, but it was when I was 18, and she was the first person in my life to encourage me to write. And I told her, I said, "Hey, I published 2 books now, and we've been talking. I even mailed them to her." So it's funny how you're told that the world is just filled with hatred and evil and cruelty, and of course it is. That's part of it, but there's also kindness and compassion.
Yes.
And for me, when I was trying to rebuild my life, I had these felony charges, and so the only work I could really find was in a kitchen, and then I got invited to work at a bar. And of course, Jehovah's Witnesses would hate that, and even AA told me, I shouldn't work in a bar. But I've worked there over 2.5 years. I'm almost 3 years sober, and I've paid off $24K in debt. It's been a really great opportunity for me. But even more than that, most of the people I work with bought my book. When I brought in stickers, they took them and said they would put them up, and they supported me. One of my friends, we took a picture of me holding a burning Bible, and she's in a red dress because, they say the devil is a beautiful woman in a red dress. Other friends took a photo of me for my author photo, and none of them wanted anything. And that, I don't even know how to explain to them how much that means to me, because I just didn't grow up with that. Everyone hated me pretty much. And I don't even think my mother ever loved me. I don't think she's capable of it. I think they've removed it from her. And yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'm 40. I work with a bunch of 20-year-olds, and they're really the first group of people to ever accept me. And in the back of my memoir, I listed all of them by their first name. And I don't know. I don't
When
think
I
I'll
was sorry.
I was just I don't think I'll ever forget them. I'm sorry.
I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I swear I'm ADHD, because sometimes the thought will pop in, and if I don't spit it out, it just kind of goes poof. So sometimes if I interrupt, I apologize.
No, you're okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, it's similar to what you were saying about younger people accepting you. When I was first disfellowshipped, I was working as a superintendent or tenants where I was at. And through them, I made some friends. So all my friends were like at least 10 years younger than me. I didn't have anybody that was in my age group, really. But, people just kind of accept you for who you are. Age doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, even when, these people have seen me, like my divorce was finalized. I mean, it's been a lot to deal with, and to wake up. And I also feel that I finally grieved my father. I never, people always gave me flack for not grieving him, but I don't know how you can when you're a Jehovah's Witness, because you're always praying and expecting Armageddon to be the next day. And that dead person is just like a carrot dangled in front of you. And I feel like it makes you stagnate. And that's what kept me tethered. When I reread some of what I've written, I'm just like, man, that, like, you should have left then and then, but you're indoctrinated. I don't think you can even wake people up. I just think it happens or it doesn't. Because if you want to believe, and if you think that the person who's actually trying to help you is evil and serves Satan, there's no way to combat that. If you're worried about what they have to say twisting your mind, it's just, I don't know, like, I want to write books. I'm going to publish 3 books 6 months apart from each other for satanic imagery, because if you say I serve Satan, I'm petty and I'm going to do that. And I don't know, but I've met some really cool people in the ex-JW community, and the cover art for each of my books is designed by a different ex-Jehovah's Witness. The cool. First one, Mentally Diseased, is Sarah Riches. I believe she's in Australia. She painted this really cool portrait. Half of me now, I had a beard at the time, and the other half, I found a picture of me at a convention or meeting. And I think it's a really striking visual. I really love that. And then the other one is by someone who is anonymous on Twitter, a friend of mine. But they have a drawing for it's kind of a skull that it's elongated with weaving. It's a really cool image. And I don't know. I've been fortunate. Just, I've kind of known what I wanted. And even I already know the artist for the Despicable, which is what I'm going to call my horror novella. And I don't know. It's been really cool making things with people that I consider friends, and, finding
being creative.
And yeah, like when I tell people, I mean, some people, when I'm like, well, yeah, I'm writing this story about the Antichrist, they're like, but I mean, whatever.
Okay, I gotta go now.
yeah. But most people are like, oh, that's cool, or tell me more about it. And I don't know. I've always loved words. I always have. And my favorite part of meetings was when I could write a talk, and I usually would try and tell a little joke, make the audience laugh. I've always loved art.
I was way too nervous for that.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I wish I could remember how old I was when I gave my first one, because I feel like I was very, very young.
I'm trying to think back to when I had mine. I don't recall.
Because I remember they had like a little stool for me to stand on at the podium. So I was a little guy.
Yeah. I was the shortest in my class as a little kid. Yeah. So I'm sure I used the little step up too.
Yeah. But I don't, I just, being a Jehovah's Witness is such a miserable existence. And I recently created a website. It's micahAllenLosh.com. I have links to both my books. I also have a section with all the art I've made. Most of it is abstract. And the first time I was disfellowshipped, a situation happened where I tried stand-up comedy in between a bunch of rap groups. And I was, there in a Black Sabbath t-shirt. Yeah. And so I found a flyer and I put that. And, I just want to pursue my dreams, or just things that are fun, that are exciting, because you don't have that, especially in the 80s and 90s, when it was 3 meetings a week, and then you had to prepare another night for each one and service at least once. We never had childhoods. I mean,
I'm 49, so I definitely remember 4-day conventions.
Oh, I never had to do that.
Yeah.
See, I'm 40. 4-day?
Yeah. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, God.
It was pretty miserable. And, book study and service meeting and all that.
So let me ask you, because I'll tell you what really kept me just paralyzed in fear is the Revelation book came out when I was about 5. And most of my earliest memories are of that book and a book study. And just, I remember a sister telling me, this is all going to happen before you graduate high school. And I was terrified. Did that book have a similar effect on you?
I don't have any specific memory of that book affecting me, like, there's an illustration of, the beast or whatever, and, fireballs from space and that kind of thing. But I do recall when I first got on social media to do this sort of thing, one of my TikToks I started on TikTok was me remembering how there was a storm. It was just a really heavy summer storm, the kind that backs up the sewer system, and the storm drains is just like a lake out there in the street. And I remember, for whatever reason, I don't know if nobody was home, but I just remember being by myself, and it was intense lightning and thunder and really heavy rain. And I was behind the couch, and I was just terrified because I thought, this is it. Like, this has got to be Armageddon. This is such an intense storm. So I definitely had those sort of feelings of like, dread that the end's coming and I'm going to be destroyed. And, I'm not good enough. I always felt like I never felt like I was good enough that I could ever really measure up. I remember at a certain point having a feeling, not knowing specifically what was going to happen, but I thought to myself, someday I'm going to be disfellowshipped because I'm not good enough to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my remembrance of, those sort of things.
Were you born in?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, me too. And I know I thought about many times, my parents were drawn to the truth, but I was born into it. So I always kind of question, am I really worthy? Because your heart is treacherous and you must resist independent thinking. So all you have is what they tell you.
Right.
And I really, I mean, that's a horrible thing for a child. I remember just laying in bed at night wondering, like, when will Armageddon come?
Yeah.
And also, my mom told me, they'll do worse things to us than they've ever done to people. So when I heard about, like, the Holocaust or Christians being thrown to lions, I would learn as much as I could. And then I'm trying to imagine in my mind what's going to be worse than being eaten alive by a lion. I mean, I've been told by several people that I have night terrors. I scream in my sleep, and I'm sure it has to do with that. I never remember my dreams, but nighttime was always terrifying to just be left alone, thinking about, what I said shit today. What if that just moved the thing a hair and Jehovah kills me?
Yeah.
It's such a ridiculous way to live.
I remember saying,
weird to realize how you were. For me, I was always in fear and panic, but I was just used to it, so I didn't even acknowledge it.
I remember I didn't curse, in school, but I had, associates in school that would. And in my head, excuse me, in my head, I'm kind of working myself up to it for some reason. Like, I'm saying the F word in my head, but I'm saying fudge. It's kind of ridiculous. But the things you feel guilty about, they're just dumb. But I do recall frequently I would have these dreams that I would be in a storm. So I also lived in Indiana. So there was a lot of tornadoes and that sort of thing. And I would have dreams about tornadoes. I would have dreams about lightning, like ball lightning and stuff, and just all kinds of like crazy weather events that I think in retrospect had a little to do with the whole, Armageddon thing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Because it just felt like you had no control, and you just don't know when it's going to get you.
But it was funny. I don't remember if I posted it or if I saw it on Reddit. I just remember I thought I was the only person that when I was a kid, I'd see a preview for a movie or a video game, and I would think, "Oh, I hope I get to see that or play that before Armageddon comes." And somebody else was talking about having that thought, and I was like, "No way!" I just, I mean, it's the idea of Armageddon is so psychotic, like I because numerous times we'd be driving around in field service and we'd have a sister be like, "Oh yeah, that house on that street. When that family's dead, that's where I'm gonna live."
Uh,
And they talk about how they're so loving and so generous, and they're just not. It's pure judgment, and I don't know.
do they really think about that? Because is it going to be a case like it's Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru roasting next to that house, and they got to kind of sweep them out of the way? Like, what are they thinking?
They're gonna like go. They're in their bed, just burnt to ash and vacuum. Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to live there? That's so. Yeah,
Yuck.
remember when that family was
It's pretty
murdered?
morbid.
Yeah, speak about what's up building.
Mhm.
It just the cherry picking and just so much inconsistent bullshit that it. I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm just embarrassed to have ever been involved with it. I know I was born into it and brainwashed and indoctrinated, but I just am profoundly embarrassed. And what I think is interesting is, like, the past week, I wore, I work at a bar, so I had a shirt on for Pride that said "Free Dad Hugs," and then I had a rainbow wig on, and I looked, truly stunning, a sight to behold. But I just did it to support, the people and kids, and
Yeah.
like it was this one lady, she like stopped me and she said, "Oh, I love your shirt," and was all excited, and I almost told her my whole life, and then I was just like, "Oh no, yeah, I'm glad you like it, awesome." And I told somebody, I said, I used to think gay people deserve to die, but I thought everyone deserved to die. If you if you celebrate your birthday or watch Terminator, everything was death. So, but none of them hold that against me. They're just like, "Well, you didn't know any better." Um,
Mhm.
and that's crazy to me to feel like a sense of redemption or just no judgment. That's really staggering because I really believe that, the whole world was lying in the power of the wicked one. And, we were living among monsters. I mean, there are other evil groups too, but
Yeah.
they really are hucksters. Because I tried to tell my mom about Bottlegate years ago.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't reconcile this, Mom. And she said, "Well, look what they do with CG and look at the Hulk and the Avengers." And I'm like, "Oh, Mom, the Hulk doesn't look real. Like, he looks good."
Oh my goodness.
But I'm like, "That is tight pants Tony." I mean, I remember, I don't know if it was just here, but they were, when the broadcast like first came out, they would show them at the hall on like the third weekend or something, and people could come and watch it. And I mean, we had internet, but we went. And I remember Tony going on that tight pants rant, and I'm sitting in the hall, kind of looking around, like, is anyone else laughing? Or because it was just absurd to me. When we were young, you might see the governing body once a year, like a picture in a magazine. I mean, I really don't remember ever seeing them. I didn't know anything about them. But when you put them in front of a camera, it's really hard to suspend disbelief and think that God is working through, Stephen
Yeah.
Lett. I mean, Rubberface. He's like, sometimes I like to find clips and show them to people I work with. And I showed this guy the other day a clip of Pillowgate, and I'm
Mhm.
just watching his face, and he's just like, but totally befuddled. And I was just like, yeah, that's what I lived in for almost 40 years, that insanity.
And I think it's made even better by the fact it's Gary Bro who talks like this.
Oh, I hate.
If you wear your pants to sexuate the sexual organs, Is it masturbation? Yes.
Yes.
Ugh. All right, bro.
Like, how many? Like, I wonder how many takes that took, because there is no. Oh God, just some of the talks.
Did he lose a bet in poker or something that he had to do that? He got the short straw for sure. He's like, okay.
Like, that is.
He's like, him and the other guy. Do you want the brothers or the sisters? I'll take the brothers, I guess.
It's just like, what's going on in Bethel? What's happening to the pillows?
It's wacky.
It's just filled with fruitcakes. Like, when I learned about the Declaration of Facts, I spent all that time. I remember one time, thankfully I never got one, but I was going to get a purple triangle tattoo.
Oh my goodness.
And, I thought all these Jehovah's Witnesses, and then it's because Rutherford writes this letter to Hitler, and it's totally his fault. And of course, he doesn't acknowledge that. It just, the more you learn, the more insane it is. And like Rutherford's tomb with the pyramid, and just, it's just crazy. I don't know. There really needs to be a Netflix documentary about them, I feel, but
I hope someday there is.
I hope. I mean, yeah. Like,
okay, so think back to your experience when you were 10, and the 3 meetings a week, and just the way everybody carried themselves and how you did things, and then think about right now and how like just such a weird mutation of what it was before.
Oh yeah,
and it's so strange and it's just like it's.
It's.
I mean, I was out at the end of 2011, so I didn't get into the whole broadcast thing. I think I went to some sort of special day regional thing where everyone's supposed to be affirming they're going to be faithful to the organization and stuff. So that's about as far as I got, and it's just such a weirdo thing now with the governing body members and the the different things coming out. That's I don't understand how you can't be what happened? What is this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say it's jumped the shark, and it was weird. I remember when they replaced the songs, or most of them, and I hated all the new songs. I never understood that. And then, we got the new Bibles, which, I mean, whatever, the silver sword. But, I mean, televangelism was contemptible when I was a kid. And then they're all about that. And then the music videos they make are super weird. There's one, have you seen the Run the Race? It's
I'm not sure if I see that one or not.
And it's there's not emojis. There's just crap everywhere. Time, I don't know, clocks and all kinds of stuff as she's just running, and they're like, run the race. It's so ridiculous. And the media they're making is just utterly absurd. Just somebody mentioned to me, they said, do you remember, have you ever seen, what is it? The convention drama about Lot's wife, and they were Asian, and they said K-pop was really, really popular around that time. And they said, do you think the organization was trying to cash in on that? And I mean, I don't listen to K-pop. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, who knows? They're just crazy because the acting is so bad. And then there's that one series where the two girls very much seems like a romance. They're so tone deaf.
Jade and Nita and Jade.
Yeah. And they don't even realize how just, or maybe they do. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they give some of those parts, and just,
they're just definitely not self-aware.
Something, or
because some of the things that they do, if they just thought of it from a different perspective, they're like, this is dumb. but they don't see it. They're like,
No, well,
somebody in the Beth is going, this is cool. I'm proud of this.
well, and it's like, what was it, the third or fourth time when we were going through the Revelation book, and they're like saying, take these papers, and
Yeah.
that was ridiculous.
I don't understand why people didn't go like, why am I whiting out something in the publication? I get New Light, but this is weird.
Yeah, and of course, during COVID, Let was like, it's the final day before the final day, and then what? Hello, I don't know. I don't know how people. I feel like there has to be a mass exodus brewing, or I hope so,
I hope.
because
I think
feel
it's
like COVID,
taking place right now, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I feel like the older people, I don't think they'll. I can't imagine my mom ever waking up. I think she's devoted all her life and time, and she has this dream of being with my dead father in paradise, even though they can't be married or have a relationship.
Right.
And if she were to actually look at what a horrible failure she was as a mother, I mean, I think it would kill her. I don't know. It's just, hopefully.
So she's probably in her 60s, I would imagine. Yeah.
She is 70.
70. Okay. So my mom she was born in 1950, so she's not much older than her.
Yeah.
And you get, when you spend, it's easy to say how long my mom's been in the truth because she got baptized. She was 6 months pregnant with me. So my age is how long she's been in. So she's been in 49 years. That's a long time to be, roped into that. My father passed away in 2004. So she is also holding on to that hope of, I need to see, see him again.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to, wake anybody up. I certainly tell people about what I grew up in, when it comes up. And it's weird, even, I think it was like right after I published Mentally Diseased, 3 or 4 people I work with texted me or told me JWs had been at their door, came up to them, and even one of the guys I work with, I have stickers with the book cover and my name and hashtag, and he said he gave it to the JWs, and he said, here, my buddy wrote a book, you need to read this. And he said they got really uncomfortable, which I thought was great. But yeah, and it's weird. A group of JWs I grew up with frequent the bar I work at.
Okay.
And actually the other day there were like 10 to 15 of them. A few I didn't know because they're probably, younger in their 20s out with the late 30-year-olds. But yeah, I would catch some of them like obviously staring at me. As soon as I would look at them, they'd look away, or like, they'd be like whispering and pointing. And I don't even know. I don't know the word for the feeling that brings up.
I don't know if that would be worse than the ghost effect, because I recall I went to an assembly, when I was still trying to go back, and my ex's family, she has a lot of people, in the truth. One of them is like he's a general manager at like the biggest used car dealership in the area. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. But they just basically just sort of looked through me and just didn't acknowledge. I could have fallen right in front of them. They would have stepped on me, I think. So I think there's different ways to see it. The staring, I can see how that would be unnerving, but also it's unnerving when they just treat you like you're dead.
Yeah. Well, I had that. I was very close with a couple. Their kids. When I met them, their little girl was 1 or 2, and they were pregnant with their son. And I was very much like a big brother to them for a long time. I even have a tattoo for each of them. And I don't know, a year or two, maybe 2 years ago, I saw the girl who's probably 25, and she looked through me. Like when I saw her, I kind of lit up and I was like, "Oh my God, there she is. I've missed her so much." And she just looked through me so thoroughly that for a second I questioned if I even existed, like if I was a
Yeah.
ghost. That hurt more
It's a
than
weird feeling.
yeah, when they stare at me, none of those people were nice to me when I was in. So of course I'm at my job, but outside of that, I would absolutely confront them because I've done it to other JWs that I've seen out when they stare at me.
It kind of makes you, sorry, it kind of makes you wonder that if you saw one of those people broke down on the side of the road or laying in the gutter because they just got mugged or something, you would probably be like the good Samaritan and you would help them because they're another human being. Were it the other way around, you kind of wonder if they would just go like, just keep on their way.
I know they wouldn't. Everyone I loved did not care I was homeless in winter. No compassion. I left messages. I will say if it was the girl, I would save her. The other people, I wouldn't. I I just wouldn't. I mean, they're snakes. It's really difficult. There's a lot of ambivalence because you have pain, and what anger is pain that hasn't been dealt with, but you can't deal with it when you're being shunned. You can just exist in it and maybe hope one day it won't hurt as much, but I don't think it's a thing you can just get over. And it's difficult too because yes, you were indoctrinated and propaganda was shoved down your throat, but at the same time it's like I don't know that it is an excuse. Maybe it's not their fault, but it doesn't mean they're good people. I mean, and that may just be based on where I live and my experience with the congregations around here, but I really just, I don't know, really, really horrible people. I remember within like the same summer, 2 guys I grew up with blew their heads off and nobody cared. Just,
Really?
That's what happens when you stray from Jehovah. The one, his mom had died and he had a drinking problem. Like, hey man, we're worried about your drinking. Like, nobody cared. Nobody cared when I was drinking either. It was just ignored. Drinking myself to death. A fifth. I mean, before I woke up in jail, my posture was horrible. I was falling. I was using a cane. I mean, I probably would have died before long. My health was really poor, and just in my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses is they are absolutely bereft of compassion. And I'm sure there are some who aren't that way, but I don't know. The congregations that I was in were just really, really toxic and really cruel. I mean, I don't hate them, but I just want nothing to do with them. I just feel revulsion. And then I just think about how they're gonna gossip and say, "Oh, we saw Micah, at the bar," and I mean, and I don't really care if people talk about me, but it's gross to think about them telling my mother, even my TikTok account, my mother's best friend, who is a massive gossip. I mean, it was kind of one of her best qualities. She was really nosy and funny, but it said that she viewed my TikTok profile, which I think is really interesting. She's even the executor for my mother's will. So I wonder if she showed my mother, what a piece of garbage I am speaking out against Jehovah. But right before my book came out, my mother sent me this letter pretty much a copy and paste, and said, talk to the elders. They can help you. There is a brochure. And I would wager I could take 5 minutes and write you a letter with more emotion and warmth in it. It just, I still have it. After I'd had it a while, I even read it on TikTok, but it really gave me the creeps that, I'm your only child and you haven't spoken to me. You didn't care. I was homeless, in jail, divorced. Even my mother, my ex-wife, lets my mother babysit him, even though I told her she's failing him. I'm like, my mother will fill that house with the people who are horrible to me, and she will try and brainwash him. I know her, but I don't know. I mean, I got out, but the loss was massive, and I'm still trying to rebuild. I certainly hope other people leave under better terms than me, but
if more people could fade, that would be ideal.
Yeah. Well, I think they really are desperate, because during COVID, just the hamster wheel stopped and you had time. And then, when you're going to the meetings online and they're like, make sure you actually have dress pants on and shoes, it's like,
why?
Everybody thought it was Armageddon. Who gives a shit? I don't, like.
It should be like, just be thankful I'm not butt naked from the waist down.
Yeah, like you've got Armageddon.
I'm not, by the way.
Yeah.
just to reassure anybody that's watching us.
You've got Armageddon go bags in the closet. A worldwide pandemic is going on. Everyone was terrified, and they're still worried about control. And just, I think that was probably a wake up for a lot of people, and also just not constantly being inundated with tasks. And and that's. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that's probably the reason why they're trying to steer people away from Zoom now, is because they can't micromanage you like they can in the congregation.
Yeah. Well, you can't instill guilt. If you're arguing with somebody, you can just click them off. But, because personally, I was privately reproved. I don't even remember, but multiple times. And I was never found out. I would just say, hey, I've done this, and, this is wrong, and I need to make it right. And they really had complete control over me for a long time, or more than I would have liked. And when my father was dying, he had cancer. They offered him blood. He said no. He willingly martyred himself for them. My mother shuns me. My marriage, the congregation just made everything so bad, and for no good reason. It's just, and then they want to, when my son told me that my mother was showing him Caleb and Sophia videos, it repulsed me, and it made me so angry. Now, the last time I tried to talk to my mother, she lied about me in court, and, so I'm not in a place where I can even say, hey, don't shove that crap down his throat, because she'll just cause more problems, and I just don't need that. But it's really difficult, I can't even watch those videos anymore. The emotions they conjure up, I don't know. I feel these huge sweeping panic attacks. It's just the imagery in my book of Bible stories. But it's different when it's a video.
Yeah,
and it looks like Toy Story, but it's nothing but indoctrination. And of course, the kids aren't going to pick up on that. They really, I feel like, have become more predatory.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to believe. I don't know if you struggle with that, but a lot of times I I cannot believe what I was a part of, you know?
It does seem kind of surrealistic now, when thinking about my life before and my life now. It's so different and so much better.
Yeah.
You know, I I say, you mentioned about you just kind of, meandered.
Mhm.
I never, I had certain privileges in that, like microphone and whatever. Um, but I never reached out. Like I never got to the point of being a ministerial servant or anything like that. And I just sort of did it. It was my life. And I don't know if it was ever really solid in my heart.
Mhm.
I kind of forgot my point. um, yeah, I kind of lost the plot here.
No worries.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I remember I used to run mics, and I remember after the first time I was disfellowshipped and came back, they kept pushing and trying to get me to reach out to be a ministerial servant and an elder. And I never wanted to be like in an elder meeting as an elder. I didn't want to be in any of them, but I didn't want to judge people
Right.
or because even the first time I really did feel bad and I was honest and I thought, when I left the room, Jehovah's Holy Spirit was going to come swirl down and affect their hearts and influence their decision. And then I come back and they're like, "Well, you're not repentant. You're disfellowshipped." And
They're just some dudes.
yeah,
There's no Holy Spirit going on there.
no, at the time I thought, "Oh, well, I'm so sinful that I've tricked myself into thinking I'm repentant when I'm really not." And they just, man, they get people to waste their lives. They rob them of their passions and they just do unspeakable things to them. And then when
Mhm.
members get hurt, they blame the members. They just, I don't know. I always think of the Joan Jett song. I don't give a damn about my reputation, but I really want to tarnish Watchtower's reputation, as much as I can. I really want to expose them with my part. I don't ever really get into the
I think that's why we do
theology.
this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the
It's a
theology
warning.
has been debunked. So for me, I just, because you think it's a perfect thing. So if one thing isn't, then none of it is. And I just don't care. And I want to pursue my art and just try and do cool things with,
Yeah.
whatever life I have left. Um, and, it feels really good if I Google my name, it says author and lists both my books. And it's like, for me, it's like, that's immortality. That's what Watchtower promised me, but could never give,
Yeah.
and how they robbed me of so much. So, you know, I, I I like to think anytime somebody in the future will look up mentally diseased or gangrenous speeches, they'll see my dumb face talking about how evil Jehovah's Witnesses are. So, like, I don't
I
know.
hope 100 years from now, well, that obviously the Jehovah's Witnesses don't exist,
Yeah.
but they'll look back and you can be a part of that, them not existing.
Yeah, that would
But
be a cool.
yeah, I was just thinking, like you mentioned before about you had panic attacks, you were saying,
Yeah.
and that was brought on by what?
So it was actually the other day at work. I was making a drink for a couple people who were off the clock, and there was this group of them, and I just caught one of the girls staring at me, and then there
Okay.
was this other girl that I'd grown up with, and when I was a kid, I thought she was really, really beautiful, and just it's like it's like they know about me and I know about them, and everybody else in the room just doesn't know what's going on. It's and
Uh-huh.
it just I can't describe it. I just felt like I was like falling into myself and just like wave after wave. And when you bartend, I'm new to it. I've worked there a while, but you count, and I just couldn't even count. And I just said I just have to go away. I have
Mm.
to go downstairs or it, I don't know. I don't know how to describe how it affected me. It just I really don't like them being near me. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. They never bother me. I mean, they never really cared about me when I was in, but it makes me angry. It breaks my heart. It just, it's like the whole gambit of emotions,
Yeah.
And I do feel sad that they're wasting their lives, but I know that I can't help them, which again, that's really sad.
Yeah.
One of the things that I won't apply it to other Jehovah's Witnesses, but I was fundamentally not a good person. I don't believe Jehovah's Witnesses are good people. I don't believe you can be okay with the genocide of millions and children. Just, that's a really shitty deity. Jehovah doesn't have to do that. He could put everybody to sleep. The fact that, I think many Jehovah's Witnesses just go along to get along, and that does not make you a good person.
No.
Frankly, it makes you a coward.
Just because you have a label of being I'm a Jehovah's Witness, doesn't make you a good anything.
I mean, why would anyone love? Yeah, why would you love Jehovah? What's to love? That's like me punching my son in the face every time I see him and be like, oh, that's an expression of love. I mean, where was Jehovah during the Holocaust? Or, countless, the Civil War, slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Any point he could have wanted to make has been made. It just, I don't know. It's weird because I despise a God I don't even believe in, but just for what he represents. And, I think it's really sick if you apply the attributes of Jehovah to a human being, especially like Jehovah. My mom thinks that Jehovah will murder me, and at least to my knowledge, he will allow her to remember me and to remember that he murdered me, but he will remove the pain away attached to that memory.
That's weird.
That was the understanding when I left. And that's, I mean, what a sociopath, that's like, I'm going to kill your dog, honey, but I'm not going to, you'll remember, but it won't hurt, that's just.
Yeah. Or the thought that I'm losing my son, but Jehovah is going to give me a new son, and I won't have to worry about it because I have a new son, and I'll forget about you.
Yeah, it's Jehovah's Witnesses. I've said this multiple times, but for me, and all of them, they're taught hatred, but they're told it's love. And when you're never away from it, you don't know any better. You think gay people deserve to be murdered? I mean, that's a hateful thing. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And I mean, I never hated gay people any more than other sinners, but still, people with kids who are having birthdays are going to be murdered. The whole thing is offensive and sick, and it doesn't hold up to any scrutiny, which is why they have to keep them so busy and so frightened. That's another tactic I read that made a lot of sense to me. It said, when your thinking is survival oriented and you're afraid, you just think about how to survive. You never really analyze anything or break it down or question it. And the fear mongering is ridiculous. Like, what was it the other day they had on jw.org, how to be a good father? And I mean, what's that? Beat him with the rod, he will not die. That was my mother's favorite scripture. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember kids getting dragged into the back of the Kingdom Hall, and one little boy was even screaming, "Jehovah, help me," as his mom is beating him. It's so sick. And especially with the CSA stuff, I hate to think that children were being harmed in the Kingdom Hall. I mean, if I would have known, I would have tried to help. That just really disturbs me. And when you hear about, these children saying, brother, sister, whatever touched me, and they tell them, do you have a second witness? That is just horrific.
It's ridiculous because people who do that don't make it Don't make it a
usually,
practice to have somebody viewing it.
it's not a guy's night, or like,
No.
it's
Yeah.
not a group activity. And
No.
regardless, most children are not going to come up with a sexual scenario. Like my son is not, he doesn't even know what that is. So if they're saying it, it's very, very likely, it happened.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, of course, there have been instances, where parents get kids to say stuff, but it's tattletale culture, and it's shaming, and it just, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling, but it's just, there's so much to it.
I feel like to kind of the synopsis of what we're talking about here is the Jehovah's Witnesses will say that they are an organization of love and a brotherhood, but they're far from it, because any sort of love that they have is conditional. And when it hits the fan, they'll have nothing to do with you. There's no love there. There's no compassion. They'll just, they wouldn't spit on you if you're on fire. And that's not love. So I don't care how much you call it love. It's not.
Yeah. That scripture they say about, what is it? A friend is a brother or a friend is sticking closer than a brother during times of distress. And
unless you disagree with the organization, or you look at porn too much, or cheat on somebody or something like that, then they're nothing.
Yeah. Then they will crush your larynx and throw you away. You are utterly disposable.
What? You smoke a cigarette? Oh, you're out.
Oh, I knew a guy who was disfellowshipped for like 40 years for smoking. And
Crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, he got reinstated right before he died. Frail old man with an oxygen tank, and shunned for all that time. And I mean, at the time, everybody rejoiced, but in hindsight, hindsight is 2020, but it's just horrific.
Yeah. Well, we've reached the awkward pause stage. Just kidding. But this has been really good. So I'm thinking, we originally discussed this as just sort of to be a conversation, and this might lead up to a different interview. But I think this has been really good.
Okay.
So, we can go ahead and wrap this up and send it out, I guess.
All right. Right on. Yeah.
That's cool. So what I wanted to say is, you have a third book now, or you're writing a third book?
So I have written 70 pages of it. It's just a novella. A lot of it even is kind of, I think, a way for me to. Some of it is kind of even like with me having discussions with myself, thinking, like, is this really, it's a way for me to deal with things that I didn't want to in my memoir, because I didn't want to deal with theology at all. I mostly wanted to talk about depression and indoctrination and just blind belief over being reasonable. And the first half is kind of being subjugated by that. And then the second half is when it was really being pushed on me, just rebelling. And I mean, I say a lot of ridiculous things in it to people, but it just, I was really angry and frustrated. And, it sucks being told stuff about yourself when it's not true, so it's like, I want to do this. I'm not trying to play games, but yeah, so I'm writing Despicable, and it will be out December 10th of this year. And that will be the third book in what I'm calling the Apostasy trilogy. So it's available on Amazon, and I have a website, like I said, micahAllenLosh.com.
And yeah, you have a TikTok, is that correct?
I have Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit.
Oh, wow.
I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. While I was writing Mentally Diseased, I was active on Twitter and all there, but I was anonymous. And then on my birthday, I revealed who I was. And the only way I can describe that is in the second Pirates movie when Jack Sparrow just stands up to the Kraken and it eats him. Like, the governing body and all their millions of dollars and whatever they could do to me, but they left me in the street and I didn't die. And I came back and said, fuck you. Like that was a really great, empowering moment that, I don't know. Nice.
It does not fit with the headset on. I wish I hadn't done that. What was I going to say now? Yeah, so I'll include all your specifics if people want to find you and your work
Awesome.
in the description. Yeah, I was thinking we're none of us are perfect. We've all screwed up somehow and done some things we're not proud of. But that is no reason for us to be disposable. And I feel like the way you have been treated, that the people that you cared about treated you like you were disposable. Yeah. And there's some value in who you are and what you have to provide to others. And they don't see that. And I think that's good that you're able to talk about who you are, what you can contribute, warn people about the dangers of this and other cults and stuff, and do some good.
Yeah, hopefully. And it's, I don't know, it's crap. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Well, and also people can change,
Yes.
But don't tolerate abuse over and over, but I think I'm a much better person than I was as a Jehovah's Witness. I really don't judge people. You might see some stuff where you're like, this person's acting a fool, but there's no like really deep, just like, oh, that was stupid, basic stuff. But there's no like judgment or thinking people deserve to be murdered by God. There's nothing like that.
That guy's gay, therefore he deserves to die, or whatever. That's
like the indoctrination. For me, it was like just taking off armor and just shackles because they don't believe, and then you have to delve into new things. And I think exposure therapy is really helpful because, you think these things are wrong, and then you go on a date with a worldly woman and you're like, oh, well, that was, fine. But doing that stuff and challenging that and birthdays for the first time. I even reached out to some family who I've seen 4 or 5 times, and my cousins were in a group chat. One of them brought me and my son ice cream and a bunch of toys that were her son's. And I never talked to them. That's overwhelming to me that, my family cares about me. Even the 2 of them read my memoir and they told me, they complimented my writing. And I've never had someone that I was related to be proud of me. Other than you were a good Jehovah's Witness, good part or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. It's been a lot of weird, wacky stuff, but it's mostly been good, just, digging yourself out of problems and stuff. So, but I'm doing it, like it's just, that's the other thing too. I make way more money than I've ever made. I've paid off tons of debt. I did it all, as a JW, no matter what. It was always Jehovah gave you this if you were good enough, and if not, it was your fault. So
go in service and stay poor. That's what it's got to be.
It's really nice to feel like, no, I did that, and it was me. And maybe I had friends, or I've worked with people who helped. My first editor, his name is Moses, which I loved. I think he elevated my writing 100%. But yeah, it's just been great doing things I want with people I want. And I don't know, I really hope other Jehovah's Witnesses pursue their passions, because I believe you only have one life, and leave a mark. And if you can make art that reflects back at that, or you're known that you were in a
Yeah.
cult, don't make it your identity. That's not what I want to do. But
Right.
I really, really have enjoyed it, and I met some great people like James. He was one of the first people to interview me, and like that's really overwhelming that someone would help me promote a book I wrote or multiple, like because I just have not experienced that. So I truly appreciate it.
Well, I hope anybody seeing this will check out your stuff. Support you that way, and
yeah,
there you go. There's I'll give you a boost. Hopefully,
right yeah.
hopefully enough will see this, and it'll do some good.
Yeah, every little bit helps, and it's good to have a community of supportive people.
I've really enjoyed being in our Discord server. I've met some really interesting people, and some good friends.
Yeah, well, and they understand in a way that other people can't. It's not their failing. You have to go through that to understand it.
It's true. So that's also why we do what we do, because we are trying to inform people who haven't gone through that so they can avoid suffering the same consequences that we did.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and one of the reasons I wanted to tell my story too is being left to die in the streets is terrifying. I was so afraid at that point that really almost nothing scares me now. That was just the extreme, one of the greatest extremes of my existence. And I don't want, if I can rally and come back and write a book, I don't want other people to give up. There were many times when I did, and I thought about just I didn't want to live. Not seeing my son is every Tuesday when he leaves, it rips my heart out. It sucks, but I want him to know who I am, and I want him to be proud of me, and he's my priority, and I don't want other ex-JWs to harm themselves because they don't deserve that. I always say, I'm on all these platforms, and my Twitter, if I'm having a bad mental health day, I just put it out there, because I think people deserve to know, maybe if they have those feelings, they're not the only one. They're not bad for saying or for feeling, hey, I feel so bad today, I just wish I didn't exist. That's not a crime, and anyone who makes you feel bad for that is not a good person. And that's what I feel. So I just, I don't know, maybe
it helps to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, maybe if I can help, even one other person, that's really cool. And yeah, it's neat to be involved in the community and connect with people from all over the world. It really is.
I'm proud to say that I never got anybody to the point of baptism because I was really bad at studies. And if I can, my record can now be get somebody out or to stop from entering, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. My ex-wife did not get baptized. She went right up to it, and then when she saw the question, she was like, this seems to be pledging yourself to 8 men. And
yep,
as acrimoniously as everything blew up, and as much regret as I have, her and my stepson and my son are out. And if I have to go through hell to save the 4 of us, and even though we're broken and not a family anymore, at least they're not in a cult, and at least I'm not, so it's, I just don't know how it could have been any other way. What good is it in imagining, what if this, it just, it doesn't do any good. You can just move on and learn, and hopefully me sharing my experience can maybe help people. At the very least, my son can, because that was another great fear. What if I die and I'm estranged from him, or he's young and doesn't remember me? I don't remember my dad, And my mom never really let me know her. It was, you don't need to know what I was like before I was a witness. And there wasn't much to her as a witness. She was just an obedient drone. So
Yeah.
I want to, I like the idea of things being out there in the world that my son can find. And I'm sure that's because my dad died when I was young. And, there were times I would Google his name and wish I could find something that would give me any little insight into him. So,
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, we're at an hour and about 40 minutes now. So, in the few interviews that I've done, I like to ask a question. I don't know if it's a good one or not, but it's how I like to finish up the interviews, is if you could go back and tell your younger self something, a word of wisdom, a warning, whatever it would be, what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell myself, I would go back to when I was 18 and say, save up your money and go meet this girl you're talking to in New Zealand.
Go get the girl. I like it.
Well, I mentioned her earlier. I've reconnected with her. We're both 40, we're friends, but
Yeah.
she was my gangrenous speeches has quite a few emo poems I wrote about her, but she was the first person to be nice to me and encourage me. And even though it was on the internet, I mean, I did love her, and I wish I would have just met her. And maybe that would have broadened my mind, my horizons, and I wish I would have left the toxicity when I could have legally. But
There's a little regret always in not knowing what could have been.
Yeah, it's better to try and fail
Yeah.
than to wonder what if. But you know what? I've reconnected. Maybe one day I can go visit her now. And
There you go.
what's really liberating now is when I speak to her, I don't feel any guilt. And there's not that distance of I'm living a double life and I have to hide that from her because it'll sound
Right.
crazy, because it is. So, it just, I don't know. Life has been very, very odd. And I don't believe in anything, but I've just seen stuff where it's kind of like, well, I can't explain that. So I don't know. Maybe some people tell me I'm here for a purpose. I don't know. I don't believe that, but I'm gonna keep writing and talking to people.
Well, whether you have a here for a purpose or not, you're still doing some good, I would say.
Yeah. Well, thank
And
you.
that's admirable.
Thanks. Well, you as well.
I'm trying. My silly little videos and goofy comedy bits, I don't know. Hopefully it resonates with some people.
Well, I think people need levity. I mean,
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses deal with a lot of dark, really dark topics.
Yes.
Even when you're in, you act like it's all sunshine, but it's a lot of fear, and I mean, it's almost all fear. So I think it's good for people to be silly, and you have the people who talk about the theology, and I think we all have different things, and we're all different. We're not the same, so that we should embrace that.
Yeah. I'm if I'm more Jim Carrey than Bill Nye the Science Guy, I don't know. if I can't spew out as many facts, but I can, entertain a little bit, give somebody something to think about, and why not?
Yeah, well, and I remember when I was in this room, really, I watched the was it Jeffrey Jackson in Australia talking about the database, and when they asked him, and he said, that would be presumptuous of us to say I broke down crying, because I knew if I was to show that to anybody, that the few people I care about that are JWs, they wouldn't believe it, and it just, I've seen that lying piece of garbage on jw.org with his fake smile. And, they just, millions are trapped. And and I just hate to think about the born-in children. I hate it. At least they have the internet, because you and me would have had to go to the library and maybe get crisis of conscience and, risk being caught. But they can do it in secret. And I know that ex-JW Reddit, I was on there yesterday. It's almost 90,000 when a couple of years ago it was just under 80. So I hope people keep leaving, and hopefully, I feel like consistent effort towards a goal will yield results. So I'm going to keep pushing. I have plans beyond. Once I get my third book out, I'm going to hire a marketing team or try and figure that out myself. So I really want to draw attention to them. And
well, look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Well, thank you.
So, but, I think we'll call it a day.
All right.
I appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe, and come back for more. So thanks again. We'll catch you later. Click.
It's about the things that we overcome. Tomorrow's a new day. I will find a way. What if this was your destiny? All that pain just so you could see everything you need is inside you.